2009, she served as the Undersecretary of the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, or DNR. From 2009 to 2015, she was a member of the Climate Change Commission of the Philippines with the Cabinet Secretary rank ay secretary ito ng gobyerno, that level.
Wow.
During her time with the commission, she spearheaded the adoption of the National Climate Change Action Plan of the Philippines. She also drafted the law that created the Philippine Survival Fund for local adaptation programs of communities and was able to raise 2 billion pesos in funds. She was successfully implemented the climate public expenditure review together with the World Bank. They were able to increase the national budget, importante ito, from national budget for climate change programs from 50 million pesos, yun lang yung budget, to a whopping 136 billion pesos
Billion.
during her time, in 2016. She also headed the Philippine delegation to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC.
Mabigat talaga siya, Barry, because this speaker holds the distinct position of being one of only two non-Supreme Court justices who were instrumental to the passage of the Environmental Rules of Court. And in 2013, she was selected as one of the most influential Filipina by the FWN International in San Francisco, California. And she is also an awardee by the Philippine Department of Science and Technology for her significant roles as a proponent of climate change adaptation in the country.
And she is currently the college secretary of the San Sebastian College of Law and TV host of the weekly documentary show, Klima ng Pagbabago at Net25. So discuss the Philippine government's response to the issue of climate change, please help me welcome none other than I will be very biased, my favorite secretary in the Philippine government so far. Please help me welcome a Mindanaoan, Attorney Marian Lucille Siri.
Salamat. Ngayong hapon. Ano naman ito sa Manila? Ato na lang tags Bisaya. Puro man tayo Bisaya. Dire? Are we most science speaking now? Well, I'm glad that I came early because I wanted to hear the other speakers and see their perspective and shorten mine. Because it's so hard to be the last speaker and be repeating what already had been said. But this one, I wanted to put, although I'm not saying I have an authority, I mean, Perry said bigatin daw ako, bigatin lang ako sa katawan, pero, I'm not married also. I'm already, I've lowered my standards, wala pa rin, so I guess I'm here hoping that I get more blessings and help me pray sisters that I may get lucky. So, Father Dexter talked about Laudato and what it was. I read it, except not the whole thing, but specifically on the chapter on the environment. Because I was asked by the CWL regional in Surigao, where I'm from, my mother, sangko sa langit, is very, very religious. Sometimes she forgets that she went to Mass in the morning, she'll go in the afternoon, nag-U-turn na. Ang dami siguro kasalanan ng tatay ko. But we're 9, so I guess that's a blessing in itself. So I couldn't say no to CWL, so I studied Laudato Si on the chapter on the environment. And I needed to share it because with all the scientific findings, with all these things we hear, I noticed that the issue in spirituality and morality is always lost or at the bottom in the discussion on climate change. So when I was asked to speak today, I said, my God, I have to come here. I cannot pretend to know more on what spirituality is all about, but I have my own insights as well. I'm a devotee of Mother Perpetual Health. I love the novena. I always say I have to be dependent on God in the midst of human achievement, and I always put that always to mind. So when we look at the Laudato Si, says, praise be with you. And then, I looked at the first chapter because there were several themes. One of that is pollution and climate change, and Father Dexter mentioned that earlier. He mentioned about the issue of water, the loss of biodiversity, decline in the quality of life and the breakdown of society, and global inequality. Why was this encyclical very important to us Catholics? Because it also speaks to non-Catholics. It was written by the Pope, who everybody thought was a scientist, but actually had units in chemistry that somehow gave him an authority, or that learning that he got at a young age, that took it, by heart and put it here. So somehow, when there was a debate in the United States, let the Pope talk about religion, let the science, leave the science to the scientists. This guy, who turned out as a loser in the presidential election, napahiya. Kasi may alam naman pala si Pope Francis. So when you look at the encyclical, the uniqueness of the Laudato Si is that it was the first devoted to environment and climate change. And I'm glad Father Dexter said, no wonder I love and I have an attachment to St. Francis. Kasi pala pag mahilig ka sa environment, somehow he was the patron saint. And then, it was addressed to every person. Catholic, Christian, Muslims, heretics, basta anyone na nakikinabang sa mundo, yun ang Laudato Si. I said, ang galing. Kasi, hindi siya nagpipreach na para lang sa mga Katoliko, damay lahat. And, it was not based on theological studies alone. It was basically based on scientific studies. I don't know, because when I was younger, there seems to be a disconnect about science and religion. I watch it in movies all the time. And then I saw Van Helsing. Have you seen it? There was a guy fighting Dracula, and kung siya si James Bond noong unang panahon, ang kanyang support system ay mga pare. And chances are, Franciscans, kasi karamihan ng Franciscans, mga scientists. Tama ba, Father? So anyway, that's just the fiction of it all. But there was science. So people had to listen. Even scientists that probably didn't believe in God, but believed that the climate is changing, had to listen. It was a global event. It was on CNN, CNBC, everywhere. I was even asked to comment. So it was exciting. And I said to myself, bakit kaya nangyayari to? Why is there a lot of interest in the Pope? Not only because, pag nakita mo si Pope Francis, parang wala kang hindi at sa kanya eh. Di ba? But then again, he was going into a territory that others might frown upon him. Because why are you tinkering on a subject that's not related to your religion? But he disproved all of those skeptics. And here, in that letter, or how do you call it? Letter, no? Encyclical. He cited and validated the scientific findings of 95% of mainstream scientists that already agreed that the cause of climate change since the 1950s increase in temperature are humans. Sinama niya yon. Sabi niya, there's already a solid scientific studies. So therefore, under LS 23, he said, humanity is called to recognize the need for changes of lifestyle. The need to change. Pero hindi naman ganun kadali. Kahit ako, climate change pinag-uusapan, hirap na hirap pa rin ako. Kaya pag sinabi nga, kailangan na siguro na makinig kay Pope Francis kasi mirakulo na minsan ang magbago ng lifestyle. And I do believe that you can teach old dogs new tricks and it still holds true. But how do you convince people to do otherwise? Pope Francis, he came here, di ba? in January 2015. Ang symbolism ng visit niya, nung nabalitaan ko pa lang, umiiyak na ako. Hindi ko maintindihan kung bakit. Kasi, for a Pope to find time to come here and elevate the sufferings of the Filipinos was already a victory in itself for those who wanted to see solution in climate change. All he had to do was smile and wave. And he went all the way to Tacloban. And after that visit, dumating ang presidente ng France. Tuwang-tuwa ang gobyerno. Finally, the first French president will come to the Philippines. And then the French president, I'm not going there for a state visit. I just want to go to Tacloban. Nagkagulo ngayon. Ako, tuwang-tuwa naman. Kasi gusto nilang i-elevate yung visit para state visit. Pero ayaw ni Hollande. Gusto lang niya pumunta ng Tacloban. Somehow, na-arrange. Naging state visit finally. Dagdala ng mga artista. Nagkapag-picture ako kay Marion Cotillard. You know her? Siya yung kontrabida sa Batman. But La Vie en Rose, she won the Best Actress in the Oscars. And he brought in other personalities because they wanted, that year, 2015 was a crucial year. You have a new Pope whose interest is into environment, and you have a new visit from a French president, and then the Paris Agreement is on 2015. Di ba yung symbolism na nangyayari, na parang nag-a-align yung universe? Why am I saying that? Kasi po, 20 years nang nagdedebate sa climate change. Bakit hindi magkasundo? Anong dahilan? Kung tayo naiintindihan na kailangan natin tumulong sa kapwa natin, bakit hindi yan maging rason para may agreement na? Kasi po, addressing climate change is not just about saving lives. It's about the economy. It's about money. Those are the things we don't see. Some people just don't want to say it. But that's the reason why. No one, especially big countries, want to change their lifestyle. So if I would like to show you a little bit of this video, why we couldn't agree. So nagbi-meeting na kasi tumaas na ang temperatura. Handshake, handshake. Pirma. Canada, UK, US, sign. Wealthy and poor countries. Si US na alimpungatan. Biglang ayaw na. Time ni Bush. Sabi ni China at ni India, ay ako nga. Pero yumayaman na sila. Developing countries. Sabi ng US and other countries, you have to cut. Ito interesting. Saudi Arabia. Bolivia. Kung ano sinabi ng US, ayaw niya. Kontrabulate lang siya talaga. Nagpasahan. Sinasabi ng Amerika, teka muna, bakit kami lang magpuputol? Eh yung China at India, yayaman na yan eh. Sabi naman ng China at India, teka muna, payaman pa lang ako eh, papuputulin mo na. Sabi naman ng Saudi Arabia, teka muna, pag kayo nag-green, paano naman yung kikitain ko? Bayaran nyo rin kami. Alam nyo, ganun kasimple ang dynamics, pero pinapahirapan ng mga diplomatic. So, anong nangyari, 20 years before Paris, hindi magkasundo sa emission cuts. Kaya kung sinabi ni Ruth earlier yung 1.5 degree, anong ibig sabihin nun? Simply put, kasi sinasabi nga ng science, ito, economic review na if we reach 2 degrees, it's already a point of no return. We are now 0.8 increase in global temperature since the 1950s. 0.8. Anong mangyayari pag 1 degree? Makikita mo na yung impact sa food, sa water, sa ecosystems. Dito ang interesting. Wala pa sa 1 degree rising intensity of storms, forest fires, droughts, flooding, and heat waves. So kung i-connect mo ang increase in temperature sa effect ng iyong food security, hindi pwede nang tumaas ng 1 degree kaya lumalakas sa atin ang Yolanda. Kaya sinasabi nila, we're visited by 20 typhoons every year, 7 makes landfall, 3 are destructive. Are you gonna ask the question, is Yolanda gonna be common? Nah! I hope not. Maybe we all pray together that it won't happen. But you cannot just pray everything away. We also have a tendency that isisave ako ni God, dito lang ako sa tabing dagat. Isang problema din natin minsan yun. Na sa sobrang lakas ng faith natin, andun yung point na hindi ako alis dito. Lakas ng paniniwala ko sa Diyos. Hindi ako aalunin. Pero iba naman yung ginawa sa Yolanda. O yung lakas ng alon, manood nga ako, biglang nag-storm surge or number 1 casualty. Matigas ang ulo. No? So when we look at this, as projected impacts of climate change, and where we should be, the 1.5 degree temperature goal, sabi ko, I was secretary then, I said, una, it was a challenge for me to be ahead of an agency where in the cabinet, only 3 of them believes that climate change is important. So what I did was, I don't think I can be able to, if I can't convince my peers, who can I convince? So I had to champion climate change inside the bureaucracy. It was a deliberate move on my part. You might not have seen me, umalis na lang ako sa climate change because I was championing an agenda inside government. We had 0 budget. And when I left, it became 136 billion. Because you have to knock on doors and convince other agencies that, hey, your programs, ang dami pong pera ng gobyerno na nasasayang. Paano? Magtatanim ng puno, tapos biglang babagyuhin. Ilalagay sa lugar na hindi naman tutubo ang mangroves kasi ibang species. Bakit? Kasi wala tayong assessment ng vulnerability natin. Wala sa kokote na dapat pala, i-assess ko muna yung vulnerability ko bago ako magtanim kasi masisayang lang yun. So when you talk about vulnerability, ito projection ng pag-asa. Pag may pag-asa, may pag-asa. But you know what? I feel, when I was secretary, undersecretary, hindi namin nagagamit yung galing ng mga tao sa gobyerno, lalo na nasa baba. Ang dahilan kung bakit hindi umuusad ang ihangsang ahensya, hindi dahil doon sa mabababang mga empleyado, kundi sa mga katulad namin na hindi naiintindihan ang gawain nila. Kaya nahihiya ako, kaya aral ako ng aral, hindi ako tumigil. Kaya mga barkada ko noon, tagapag-asa, na halos di na nagsusuklay. Kasi nag-aaral na March, April, May daw by 2020. Red is drier, yellow as is, blue is wetter. Ganyan na magiging projection sa buong Pilipinas. And 2020 is just around the corner. And Pag-asa said, March, April, May 2050, all of the Philippines will experience drier weather. One study. Tanungin ko taga Mindanao, what's our major source of electricity? Hydropower. Did we consider these findings? Exactly. So kahit anong dasal mo, kung nagmamaang-maangan tayo sa mga ganito, wala rin. And then the study also shows that by June, July, August of 2020, the rest will experience maulan. Ang the Mindanao will continue to experience a longer dry season. Ano mangyayari sa amin doon? Kaya dyan pumasok naman yung coal. Uy, pwede ang coal. Uy, pwede si ano. Minsan kasi, hindi rin natin nakikita yung economies of scale o yung trade-offs na tinatawag. Kaya dito natin naiintindihan, kaya pala hindi masolusyonan ng climate change globally kasi it's about the economy. So, if you look at this, June, July, August 2050, same. And here, I just want to point out, kung tayo, matagal naman may ulan na mabinabagyo, di ba? Sabi ko nga yung earthquake, hindi yan kasama sa climate change. Sinasabi ko lang, wala naman namamatay sa earthquake. Ang namamatay sa earthquake, kung malas mo lang, nahulugan ka, o di kaya, namatay ka sa kaba. Taga-Surigao po ako. Ang ate ko, bilib na bilib sa akin, maya tinatanong ko mag-earthquake ba? Sabi ko, sa inis ko, sabi ko, ate, matulog ka sa gabi, lagay mo unan mo sa mukha. Kung sakaling mamatay ka, maganda pa rin mukha mo. Galit na galit ko, lalo din na tumawag sa akin. Sabi ko, wala pang nakaka-predict ng earthquake. What am I saying? Because we're almost 100 million people, we heighten our vulnerability because we are in harm's way. Simple example. Do you remember in Manila Bay, nung biglang nag-surge? Nagsara ang embassy, nagsara ang Sofitel, nagiba ang yung dinidata ng mga tao doon. Bakit dumating yung yung tubig hanggang doon sa likod ng ng Baywalk? Kasi binabaan para kaya ko po mag-lovers. Na dapat mataas yun. So hindi talagang pumasok yung issue ng design. Pero nakita natin, pag may pera ka, after 1 month operational at Sofitel, after ilang weeks bukas ng US Embassy, pero ang Baywalk, sarado pa rin. Yun ang ibig natin sabihin na ang vulnerable po sa atin ay ang mahihirap. Kaya pag sinabi natin, and we look at the live data to think about the poor or climate change, because they are really in harm's way. In Ondoy, did you hear people dying in Forbes Park? No. Exactly. So, but where are we now? We are susceptible, we are vulnerable because we are in harm's way. What is government doing? And that's the reason why you asked me to come here. I won't be truthful enough. Although I'm no longer in government, but we have our lapses, and there are a lot. When we talk about this is a picture in Iligan City. This is where you see houses, roads built by the local government. Dito po karamihan ang namatay. Bakit? Dahil tumaas lang ang lupa, pinatituluhan, nilagyan ng daan, dinevelop. Hindi inisip that nature will always reclaim. So karamihan na namatay dyan. Na magaganda ang bahay na hindi naman technically mahirap. So imbis kung dati yun lang mahihirap ang expose, kung tanga ka, expose ka, paano na? May batas tayo on climate change and disaster risk. Pag hindi pinakinggan ng local government, ang mga scientific findings, pwede silang idemanda perpetual disqualification from office. Tanong ko, may isa pang mayor na nademanda? Wale. So this is where we are. And sometimes our tendency to be like, our tolerance is so high, which is also a value of a Filipino, is when we scrap everything, okay na, pakisama tayo, okay na tayo. Pero hindi dapat pagdating sa climate change, hindi pwedeng okay na yan. So lumabas dito, example, kung bakit hindi ako nag-resign sa trabaho ko kaagad. Kasi, the highest or the pinakamalakas ng wind at pinakamaraming rainfall. For example, Typhoon Feria. Pinakamaraming ulan. Pero wag ka. Hindi siya disastrous. Hindi ibig sabihin na malakas ang ulan, malakas ang hangin, sigurado. Pero pag nakita mo, yung disastrous tropical cyclone ay hindi naman technically malalakas. Nasa mindset. Why am I so passionate with my discussion? Because Typhoon Nitang, I experienced that. I lost a lot of friends. Kung meron akong good memory ng Typhoon Nitang is 1 month walang pasok. Pero boring na afterwards. Kasi walang kuryente. Petromax. Tapos, doon ako natuto magmajong kasi yung parents ko, dahil walang magawa, magmajong, Petromax, yung manonood ka na lang. So, what are we saying here? Numbers don't lie. If we know how to adapt and reduce our risk, we will not be miserable. But we need to listen to what we've seen. And most of the people who lost their lives are those who live in the coastal areas, which is 60% of our people living. And then, lastly, nung ganun na, papunta ng Paris Agreement, hindi nyo makita, ako yan sa gitna. In-offer yung presidency ng Climate Vulnerable Forum. Sabi ko, kunin ko yan. Bakit? Gagawin ko tong platform para gayakin ang mga mahihirap at maliliit na bansa para itulak ang 1.5 degree goal. Dahil sabi ko sa mga ministro, hanggat hindi tayo ambitious, magkamit man natin o hindi, walang goal prior to that. Sinasabi lang below 2 degrees. Ayaw ko nun. Sabi ko, gawin nyo ng 1.5, magpakaklaro na tayo. Pero sa loob-loob ko, pumunta na nga si Pope Francis, pumunta pa si President, siguro naman. Minsan din pala talaga kailangan mo lang maniwala. So I took the presidency. As soon as I sat down, I created the Climate Vulnerable Forum. We brought in 20 more countries. The Philippines was already representing 1 billion people. Of the 40 countries, ay po pwede na to, sobrang dami na. Then we created a group of finance ministers. So we will talk about the money. Because it's not about losing lives anymore. We need to know where to get those funds. We will be drained. So after this, I got Ding Dong Dantes, Alden Richards, Marian Rivera, just like Leonardo DiCaprio. These are the people willing to use their celebrity status to get more signatures. So we did a hashtag now PH, not on our watch. PH, kasi National Youth Commissioner noon si Ding Dong Dantes. We generated signatures. We wanted 1 million. Of course, the CBCP was so helpful. Sabi ko, Dong, kailangan natin makuha si CBCP kasi one time lang yan. Oh. Kailangan natin ng 1 million. Lo and behold, before 3 months, we got 1 million. We reached 3 million going to Paris. Said, what's the significance? We got the visit, we got the signatures, we have the support of the President, then I resigned. Sabi ni Presidente, ba't ka nag-resign? Siraan mo ko ng bait, tumakbo kong congressman. Pero at that time, kung hindi ako nag-resign, hindi pupunta si Pinoy sa Paris, ako lang papupuntahin niya, anong stature ko? Kaya sabi ko, lahat may dahilan. I resigned before Paris, I did my job substantially, already prepared everything. All they had to do is go there and negotiate. And you know what? The President went. We had a high-level meeting. All the major cabinet secretaries went. Ding Dong Dantes turned over the signature, and the agreement used 1.5 degree as a goal. kasama sa agreement for the first time, and the Philippines led that agreement. Tapos na ang ko. Mayabang na. Diyan, election. Philippines won't honor UN climate deal, says President. Ching! Ayaw ni Digong. Kanyari. Hirap na hirap ako, kakahanap ng signature, ayaw niya. Pareho pa naman kami taga Mindanao. Siguro dahil busy siya sa ibang issues. Busy siya sa drugs, busy siya sa... this is like a serial killer, you know? When one typhoon, immediately you become poor as a community. One sweep, 100, 200 dies. It's even worse than extrajudicial killing. You cannot put this issue behind and say it's not important when Yolanda killed 7,000 people in one day. Because Mother Nature is a serial killer. But in this movie, have you seen the movie World War Z? There was one liner there of the doctor. He said, Mother Nature is a serial killer. But what's good about her is she leaves crumbs for you to know. Binibigyan tayo ng pag-asa kung paano solusyonan. So he said, okay, bakit nga ba? Kasi may isang ambassador nagtanong, gusto daw niyang sipain. Kasi tanga-tanga daw. Pero alam mo, may point si President din, ha? Kasi social justice, bakit naman pinipilit ang mga mahihirap mag-reduce, ibaliit naman ang emisyon natin. May sinabit kasi ako noon, ang dami nagalit sa akin, 70% reduction by 2030. Sabi ng mga energy sector, yoko yan! Sabi ng ito, hindi pwede. Walang kakayanin, hindi teka relax. It's conditional of support. Kung hindi ako susuportahan ng mga mayayamang bansa, di wala akong i-reduce. Ganun lang yun. Kung magpapabayad ka lang, kailangan naman 20% lang ibigay mo. Di 70% na, kung pwede nga 100. Kasi at that time, nung ginawa namin yun, we are in the middle of negotiation. You cannot put all your cards on the table. Hindi kasi masyado naintindihan yung submission, kaya ang daming sabi, wag pirmahan. But, kasi nga naman, tingnan mo naman, umutot lang ang baboy at baka, methane na. Yan yung mga causes in everyday life, di ba? Kaya sabi mo, pag baka, pag dumidigay, every day. So, it will impact our agriculture. True. If we reduce our emission, it will hit our agriculture because technically agriculture is one of the highest emission. So, paano nga naman? So, I was careful. Hindi ko sinama yung agriculture sa submission. Sinama ko lang yung mga sektor na pwedeng tulungan para mag-transition. Sino ba naman ang ayaw ng malinis at na source na electricity? Di ba lahat naman ng solusyon, yung debate sa science, hayaan na yun. Hindi man tayo lahat scientist. Pero yung solusyon na itinutulak, switch off the lights, change to LED, cleaner sources, walang mercury, a windmill, walang coal. Malinis naman, di ba? Sino bang ayaw? Bakit? Kahit ayaw mo maniwala ng climate change, yung alternative naman, maayos naman. Yun nga lang, mahal pang renewable energy, kaya tayo humihingi ng support para bumaba. Now, because awareness remains low, hanggat hindi tinatamaan ng sikmura at tiyan, hindi ka maiintindihan ng nakakarami. Sabi nga ng isang, it was actually a priest, and it struck me. They had a forum in Mindanao about energy. Said, we have to replace your electricity with ganyan, coal. Sabi ba naman ni Father, di na baling brown out, nakakatulog ako ng walang kuryente, pero hindi ako nakakatulog ng busog. Paano kung dumihan mo yung dagat ko or yung river ko? Tama nga naman, may point. So, when we look at this, then we have a good news. Kahit ayaw ni Presidente, somehow, we found champion. Senator Loren was able to push, and finally, the Climate Paris Agreement was ratified this month. Siyempre, nandun si Rosel Siling sa tabi, di ba? Minsan lang to. But, you have a US President named Donald Duck. A few days ago, he voided a clean power plan. His main purpose, because see, if he is a rich man kasi mayaman mag-isip, kailangan mo kuryente ko, kailangan mo energy independence, kailangan may coal, dadami trabaho. Pag masyado ka na kasing ostentatious mag-isip, hindi mo wala ka ng dun sa ibang tao na hindi naman ganyan ng pangangailangan. Na yung background naman niya, mali rin yung premise, kasi hindi na dadami ang coal job sa US dahil automation na. Bumaba yung oil, bumaba yung fracking, wala nang space for coal. Yes, he did that, pero Barack Obama and his team put some safety nets that it will take years before any new president can overturn some of the policies. So hopefully, aabot ng 4 years, there will be re-election and there will be someone strong enough to beat Trump. Dahil pag wala, he can reverse a lot of things. Second highest emitter in the world. China is number 1. India is number 3. The Philippines is somewhere there. But we're growing as an economy. And what we saw, the higher your economy grows, the higher your emission. But there's also now a decoupling. If you change the way you power your economy, you don't have to increase your emission. And that's what we're trying to do in government. So lastly, for the next 40 years, 2 billion people, 400% increasing economy, 200% need for electricity, 300% increase in cars. Kung yung China, umutot lahat, sabay-sabay lahat ng Chinese. Ilang nuclear bomb yun. Pero, may electric vehicles naman. Meron namang renewable energy. So, may alternatives. Kahit ayaw pa ni Trump, kung ang American people will force the market, sabihin ko kumpare, isa sa atin, ayaw ko na niyang coal na yan. Ayaw ko nang bumili dyan. Pwede, may gagagawa ba si Trump? Ayaw ko na nitong mga ganitong ilaw. Gusto namin dito, sa lahat ng Carmelite institutions, buildings, gusto ko LED light. May magagawa ba sinong Presidente Poncio Pilato? We now have to change our lifestyle and force the market to change kasi kung ano yung demand, yun ang supply. And that's why the messaging here is crucial. Samahan mo ng spirituality para talagang tindi ng konsensya. Pero pag sinabi mong, pag ako nagpalit, nakakatipid ako ng 40%, mabilis pa sa alas 5. So, my favorite, live simply so that others may simply live. I try. Sa bahay ko, kuryente ko 1,000 pesos na. Kasi may solar ako. Pero my God, 5 taon ko pang pagbabayaran yung solar ko. Pero mahirap naman maging climate change secretary ka if you don't lead by example. So I guess that's the message. Whatever in our own little way, if we can lead by example, in our own little way to convince others, neighbors, friends, to change. I like it here, there's no aircon. Huh? Kilikili, buti na lang maganda ang aking deodorant. Ha? But, you've said electricity. This is actually, I don't like going to hotels. Lagi kong pinapansin yung mga ilaw nila. Ang aircon, pag nag-jacket ka, ibig sabihin, sobrang lamig na. Example, sa inyo sa atin ha, kayo mag-aircon, hindi ko maintindihan mag-aircon na ang kakapal ng kumot, hindi na makita yung ito na lang lumabas. Tapos ang temperature 16, tas taas ang kuryente, hindi ganun yun. Dapat enough, di ba, to be comfortable. I put mine at 24 degrees, enough na hindi ako pagpawisan. Tulog naman ako 8 hours. I use ceiling fan. Actually, the ceiling fan is more effective. Brings the heat up, and then you turn on your aircon para hindi mahirapan yung compressor. Because this one, naano lang niya yung heat at a certain area. So anyway, I talk too much. I love it. And are there more questions? No more questions. I have a date. As I mentioned earlier, I've lowered my standards, so I don't want to be late. So thank you so much, and good afternoon.
Thank you, Attorney Lucille Siring.
Yes, thank you, Sec. Until now po, although out siya sa akin kasi I work under Office of the President now, under Duterte. So, ouch. But you know what? With my biases, I love Secretary. I used to work with her in a Generation campaign a few years back, and I saw how Secretary, until now I call her Sec. So Secretary Lucille Siring really worked a lot before. So,
Yes, thank you, Attorney Siring. We learned a lot. There's really a need to change our lifestyle.
yes. Oh, so balikan natin yung sinabi kanina, di ba, while serving your snacks here. Ang sinabi kanina, ano yung pwedeng gawin natin? Pwede ba tayong i-reduce yung carbon emission natin? Instead na magdala ng sasakyan, baka pwedeng carpool na lang. Instead na gagamit ng shower, baka pwede magtabo na lang. Just to reduce the carbon emission, your carbon footprint.
That's right. It's a littlest ways talaga. Yung switching off the lights and, unplugging your desktops. Yung mga ganon.
Totoo yun. And you know, I used to work in an NGO before. I used to fly every week here in Manila. At ako, konsensya ako, pwede naman pala mag-Skype meeting. Tama nga naman. Tipid ka pa, you don't use too much, but ano yung pwede yung gawin? That's a good reflection this Lent season,
Yes,
right?
definitely. And all year round, baby.
Yes, exactly. Oh, so, ayun.
You know what? Looking back sa all four speakers, what I've realized is that climate change is not an issue, boxed as an environmental issue. It's something that it affects us politically, socially, economically, and spiritually.
That's right. And again, tama yung sinabi ni Sec Lucille kanina na we should force the market not to change the supply. Kung ano yung demand natin. So we have to demand for renewable energy, use LEDs, etc. in our own little way.
Yes. And so at this point, we would like to call on the stage the Secretary of the Order of the Carmelites, Father Marlon Lacal, for a short message. Father Marlon.
Everybody, if you have some questions later, please, may open forum tayo in a few. So please prepare your questions. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Sa ngalan ni Father Tim, in behalf of our provincial and the members of the Provincial Council, we would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude for all of us who participated in this forum. Napapanahon po ang usapin ng climate change. Sa dinami-dami ng magiging karanasan natin, kailangan talagang pag-usapan ito, hindi lamang ng isang sektor ng lipunan, kundi maging sa loob mismo ng simbahan. And then we are very grateful for our Titus Francois Media Program who facilitated this forum para magkaroon ng avenue of which we would hear various ideas pertaining to the subject at hand. Now, maraming salamat sa mga speakers. Walang hanggang pasasalamat sa pagbahagi ng inyong expertise to the field. And of course, sa lahat sa atin na later on mag-participate sa pamamagitan ng ating mga tanong, maraming salamat po. At sana mas mapalalim yung ating pangunawa sa usapin, and this may also compel us to participate in concrete gestures and actions that pertains to the protection of the environment. Kung tutuusin po, sa perspektibo ng Biblia, hindi na usapin dapat ang climate change. Bakit? Automatiko na yan, dapat bahagi na yan ng natura ng ating existence to care for the environment. But, people are so greedy that we are compelled or we are being driven by greed to abuse and to misuse what God naturally had endowed upon us. Pero, hindi pa naman huli ang lahat. Medyo huli na, kung titingnan natin yung estado ng ating kalikasan, but there is always, in the sphere of spirituality, there is always what we call transformation and recreation, of which in the process of transformation and recreation, we will reclaim our original gift, our original identity, the original nature, the original character that we received from the very beginning of our creation. It's not yet too late. Our creation is groaning and wanting for transformation. And as people in the media and people in the church, if we work hand in hand, there will be no reasons that we cannot overcome this difficulty. It's just that we have to make it not just an option, but really a life for us. Not only for us, because we are already older, but of course, we owe this world to our younger generation. The process of transformation begins today, and it is not outside of us. It will always be a transformation process that begins inside of us. Sa ngalan po ng Order of Carmelites, sa ngalan ng Titus Branch Media Program, maraming salamat po sa iyong pagdalo at pakikisa. Mabuhay tayo.
Thank you, Father. Okay, so at this point, we would like to invite all of our 4 speakers on stage. If you would join us on stage, please take your seats. So we would like to call on again Dr. Crispin Maslog, Dr. Ruth Guzman, Father Dexter Toledo, and Attorney Mary Ann Lucille Siring. And very well, we're all having our dinner. We would also be formally opening our forum, our open forum. So if you would have any questions, comments, or reactions, and that you would like to address it to any one of our speakers, may we invite you to please ask your questions now.
So we'll start this conversation. Any question? Yes. Let's start from. Okay. Name po at saka organization lang.
Christ the King po, Rev. Father Mamet, our parish priest. Siya po ang nag-outreach ng mga taong under, yung mahihirap na marginalized na tao po. I hope more parish priest will do the same thing. Ang hindi ko po magka-question. Reaction ko lang kay Father Dexter. Kasi yung projection niya na pinakita, yung mga bata, at saka yung mga laro, nagbalik po sa akin ang aking alaala na talagang sa ilog, pwede kang maligo eh. Magtampisaw ka doon. Pero sa ngayon, ang nakikita ko sa media, mga batang mahihirap, kaya nabanggit ko mahirap eh. Ang mahihirap, ang nasa naliligo sa baybay ng Manila Bay, sa ilog ng Marne, sa whatever na hindi nila ma-afford, yung mga resort na magbabayad. Yun po na ang ibig kong tukahin dito. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat. Father, do you want to say something? Okay, thank you for that very good comment sa presentation. Okay, so our speakers are ready to answer your questions. So anyone? Take Doc.
Hello, good afternoon. I'd like to congratulate you and to thank you first. You've given such very beautiful and insightful messages, especially all of you. My question, I am Jain Aragon from the Diocese of Novaliches under Father Nunet Legaspi also. And my question will be for Father Dexter. Father, and Attorney Lucille specifically talked about the reason why climate change is so hard. It's really mostly because of money. And in Laudato Si, you specifically mentioned also that Pope Francis made this encyclical to also for the poor people. Now my question is, so if we do climate change and we cut off with plastics and all those stuff, what would happen to those businesses who are, small businesses, who's into plastics and stuff, ang unang mawawalan dyan ng trabaho ay yung pinaka-maliliit. Ang unang mawawalan ng trabaho ay the poor because, syempre, aalisan mo ba ng trabaho yung may MD or PhD ka? So my question is, how does the encyclical, but I don't think the encyclical actually discussed this because I also read some of it. So if the encyclical did not discuss this, Father, how would you address this question that when you do have these changes for climate change, you also cut through the poorest of the poor kasi sila yung mawawalan ng trabaho. And yet the encyclical is for the poorest of the poor, for the poor. So please comment on this irony. Thank you.
Hello, Mike. It's just fortunate that in our advocacy, we're also working side by side with various groups who are also interested in how to properly address this Asian climate change in a more holistic manner. I understand maybe some of the other speakers can substantiate on how we can come up with a more concrete response to this. But it is really true. Usually the confusion would rise about side by side, maybe not only just the issue of climate change, but also, for example, the issue of mining. There is a growing tendency to put the discussion that as if we would be doing some change, then it will be affecting the poor. When in fact, it is proven, and it is also true, that just by simplifying our lifestyle, we actually enter into the simplicity itself. And at the same time, we are also very much sensitive on how, for example, in mitigating or going into a cleaner energy, that would mean a closure of some plants. Then there is also, at least for us, we're also very much aware that the people who will be losing their jobs will also be given opportunities so that they can have, they can continue with their lives. But this time, based on a more cleaner and a greener economy. Because practically at the end, the issue of the climate change is really a concern of everyone. You'll be surprised that in our groups we are working with human rights advocates, and the reason is very quite clear. Because if we don't work for the issue of the environment, then practically all the other issues will fall seemingly useless. Why we talk about human rights, for example, if at the end, then the poor people will also be affected, and this is a much more pressing issue. Not that per se that the others are not so important, but many of our members see that in the issue of climate change, we discuss the issue of poverty, we discuss the issue of human rights, we discuss oppression also of the people, and at the end, it's really the poor people who are really experiencing a lot. What I'm saying is, briefly again, we're conscious of it. It's not at all very easy, but hopefully with all people working together, then we can find a cleaner and brighter future.
Thank you, Papa Dexter. Now, just springing off from that question, and maybe we would like to expound more on this. There is a common call to all four speakers to actually have a change in lifestyle. And now, if we, as pointed out by Dr. Aragon, this would basically affect the poor people. Now, if there's listening, I address to you this question. Being part of the government, do you think that because there will be an if the lifestyle change would happen, do you think there's going to be a change in the jobs that we're offering probably, and the poor would suffer. And do you think that the government can handle the immediate effects of jobless people due to the call of to a greener lifestyle?
I disagree actually that it's the poor who will suffer if we address climate change. I don't think that's the message here. The whole idea is when we talk about alternatives, it's like a child who has a toy and you bawian mo, dapat may kapalit para hindi umiyak, di ba? Ganun yung concept na if you use coal and you know that it's dirty, there are now alternatives. So the trade-offs will be there. There are trade-offs where it would be good that the market will help, but there's a point where government should intervene. So when we look at this, for example, talk about mining. I'm from Surigao. Secretary Gina Lopez canceled substantially most of the mining permits there. And the reason of the provincial government is please don't, because we will lose about 10,000 jobs. But Gina was steadfast and said, no, the environment has suffered long enough. It has to stop. So what we're saying here is, Sec Gina got a lot of opposition because the opposition is mainly, you did not provide full alternatives. You did say, if you close this mine, where will these people get their income? Surprisingly though, from a Surigao perspective, 80% of those who will lose their jobs are not from Surigao. Because we don't have a skill. So in short, the problem is really systemic. So overall, the reason why we wanted to push for a solution on climate change, because at some point, if we do not do something, we will run out of resources to feed not just a good number of people, but a great majority. Kahit mahirap ka, wala ka na mabibili. So in short, when we look at this, alternatives are key. There will be trade-offs, that's true. But I disagree that the poor will be affected. Because you see, in Muntinlupa, perfect example. Binaan yung plastic. Nagwayad yung plastic industry. Mawawalan daw ng trabaho. Nanindigan yung mayor. Kasi lagi siyang binabaha na ang loss ng revenue niya ang taas. Nung binaan niya ang plastic, after a month, nagbaha. Naumulan. Hindi na bumaha sa Muntinlupa. Hindi na siya gumastos ng malaki. Yung dapat sana ibibigay niya sa mga relief goods, nagamit niya sa ibang bagay. So, ibig sabihin, hindi lang isa ang tingin. Marami kang titingnan. So, hopefully, this is what the messaging is all about. That, yes, we might hurt in the process. Like buying LED lights. People will say, ay, ayoko mahal. Ako may LED lights, hindi pa uso. 6 years na. Hindi pa rin napupunti, naiinis na ako. Pangit na ang design, gusto ko na siyang mamatay para makabili na ako ng bago. Sulit na. So, ibig sabihin, mahirap man sa umpisa, pero pag talagang nakita natin na yun ang magandang patutunguhan, we cannot use the poor as an excuse. I hope I was able to.
Yes. Yes, Professor Ruth.
On my perspective also, because Lucille actually mentioned 2015 as a landmark year when Laudato Si was published, came out, and Paris Treaty, and also the approval of the Sustainable Development Goals. No? The 2016 to 2030 time frame that replaced the Millennium Development Goals. So where the poor is concerned, actually that is the one first major concern of the goal is eradicate poverty and eradicate hunger as number 2. And the rallying cry of that 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the UN that covers the globe, not all the global community, is no one should be left behind. So it really has to consider the plight of the poor. And as to what you say that we can displace industries, then that gives us the allowance to really have alternatives in terms of innovations. Because the human mind is limitless in terms of creativity if we really go into it. So we can surmount problems also by our own creativity.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth. If there are any more questions?
More questions?
Yes.
I would like to have a follow-up on my question. And this is again directed to Father. Father, I would like a categorical answer on your part. Do you or do you not believe that with the support for climate change, the poor people will be really affected as against to the rich people? In short, Father, I just want a categorical answer. sino dito sa dalawang grupo ang mas maaapektuhan ng support for climate change at the initial, at the onset? Yung stop nyo lahat ng plastic, mawawalan ng trabaho, stop nyo yung ganito, you know, sino sa kanila ang mas madedevastate at the initial onset? For you, Father, would it be the rich people or the poor people? And if you say the poor people, is this for you? Is this kind of situation okay for you? So that in the future you will have a better situation.
With the yes, with the ongoing discussions on climate change and with the rising opposition also to it, it's almost obvious that the one who will be suffering the most about this awareness of climate change is really the rich people. It's really the rich people who base their economy, who base their subsistence on ways and means that would really actually get more from the poor, kukuha ng kukuha doon sa mga mahihirap, to really enrich them. As I have told you, and as in the way that we have turned back in the past, we have lived long enough. And maybe our ancestors, in a way that life is actually very simple, and they are living freer. They are not really given something eh. Hindi naman sila nasabi natin bumalik sa pagiging mahirap. If going back to pagiging mahirap is not having cell phones, not having all of these technologies all around you, then there is also a problem with that kind of definition. If being mahirap is also going back, wala na yung plastic, then there's also a problem with that. Na parang pag tinanggal natin yun, ibig sabihin na buhay tayo, to sa tinuro sa atin sa kanila, na ito yung pagiging mayaman. By living simply, we go back to the basic, and by going back to the basic, we go back to our core and we realize that we are not really poor. We are rich, but the thing is, we are becoming greedier and greedier, and that's where we need to address the problem.
Thank you, Father.
Is there any more questions from our speakers? Well, while waiting for other questions, I would like to address this question to Professor Maslow. Professor, I am a media practitioner myself, and is there a way for us to influence the schools or for example, the DepEd or the CHED, for example, to integrate the climate change education to schools in the country? What's your thought about it?
Okay ba if I stand? I can be seen better pag nakatayo ako. Problema ko talaga pag nakaupo na ako. Yeah, I'd like to answer that question and then I have other comments. Yes, the media, as media, can do something about the problem. The problem is there is not enough reporting in context of climate change. I think the media needs to be educated and they need to attend seminars, workshops. And that can be one project of the group. You can reach the media. Secondly, the schools themselves. If we want more journalists to be properly trained in reporting climate change, we need to offer courses. Not a degree, not a 4-year degree, maybe a 1-year program, certificate in environmental communication, which, by the way, Silliman University is offering. Probably Silliman is the only Christian university or religious university that's offering a course in environmental communication. They're doing that. And the third, of course, is the area which I mentioned in my PowerPoint presentation, which is that the NGOs and the business community are now going in this direction, taking matters into the forefront and offering training. But may I just make 1 or 2 comments in relation to what transpired this afternoon, because I might not have another chance. I took down notes. That shows you I was listening. Number 1, I could see that all of you were mesmerized by the presentation of Tony Lucille. So I will nominate her for president. um, Secondly, I was paying attention to your comment. You disconnect to reconnect. Okay, you mentioned that. I would like to let you know that I tried to connect with Google and they gave me the wrong address. So I ended up in Commonwealth before I found my way here. So I am told that Father Eilers has one good advice. Do not trust Google. In connection with the comment of Professor Ruth, she was saying very optimistically that now, with all the scientific evidence, no one denies that there is climate change. I would like to inform her that there is one person who still denies climate change, and that is my second most favorite president, President Trump of the US. He denies that there is climate change. And of course, you know who is my favorite president. Your kababayan.
Thank you, Dr. Rizvi.
Finally, Trump is my favorite president. Just a little religious joke, no? I'm collecting religious jokes, by the way, and that's my next book. Martial law jokes now, and I'm collecting jokes about religious. Anyway, this joke is about a Protestant minister who went to the parish priest. He said, "Father, baptize my dog." And the parish priest was angry. He said, "What do you think of me? Why should a dog be baptized? That's unthinkable." So the Protestant minister said, "Okay, Father, don't get mad. That's all right. I will just go to the next Protestant church and I will ask him to baptize my dog." And I was willing to pay $100 for the baptism. So the Father Catholic priest said, "Oh, wait a minute. I did not know that your dog is Catholic." Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rizvi. Are there any questions from the crowd? Yes, the lady from behind.
Good afternoon, everyone. If I'll raise my question, actually suffered experienced the same with Sir Maslow. I ended up at Commonwealth somewhere near there, so never really trust locative technologies all the time. Anyway, and that's why I missed your thoughts, sir. Well, my question is directed to you. I have two questions. First is, do you think that media's representation of this issue on climate change also has to change to make it a lot sexier, in the sense that what becomes more immediate to audiences now, as we know of, is those issues on killing and violence. So how do you think that the representation of such issues should have to be changed to make it to also have that urgency in it? My second question is that this particular issue on climate change, how do you think should this be articulated in the media and information literacy syllabus of DepEd, knowing that in their syllabus guide for now, it is not that emphasized, and we know that among other issues, this is an important issue that has to be inserted and be tackled in that particular syllabus. Thank you.
That's my question. Okay, on the subject of making your journalistic report sexier, I agree. And that's what we are doing. We call it sexy journalism. Sexy journalism. Uh, I hope you don't mind if I was thinking of Atty. Lucien when I was saying that. Um, Secondly, on the question of whether we should uh, fight for inclusion of climate change in the curriculum, I think we have an opportunity here. I know that the DepEd is revising its high school curriculum, revising the journalism component of their year 12 curriculum, I think. And it so happens that the person in charge of that is my former student at UP Los Baños, and I'm in touch with them. So if you as a group could sort of lobby for that, I am willing to take it with me to her. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Crispin. Are there any other questions? Okay, maybe just a quick question. This one I direct to Dr. Ruth. NASA said that there are actually benefits that can be reaped from climate change. In your expertise, is this true? Do you think that there are really good things that would come out of this climate change that we're currently experiencing?
As to benefits from climate change, it will depend probably on which area is happening. On which area is happening and how it affects the ecosystem. Because in the ultimate